Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. I'm Matt, and today we have another return guest for you guys, and a very, very special guest that we're excited to have on for, I think, the third time now. He's a man who, in many ways, is responsible for this show even existing in the first place. He's a man who's responsible for both Austin and I having created and developed and cultivated a lot of the mindsets, a lot of the messages and missions we carry today, and especially a lot of our passion, particularly when it comes to the gym and lifting, and particularly powerlifting on my side. It's not often in life that you get to meet people who affect your life in such a profound way, who you learn so much from in ways that you never even would have imagined that you needed at the time. And someone who consistently does that for many individuals on a regular basis in what so many of us would call a family. And that's truly what it is at Monsters Bent Barbell. It's a family of people who come together, and we are all sometimes from different backgrounds, sometimes from shockingly similar backgrounds in many ways. Yet we come together, and sometimes we have our differences and we work through those, but we all know what it's like. We all know what it's like to fight under the bar. We all know what it's like to work through pain and sorrow and sometimes suffering in life's hardest moments. And in the midst of all of that challenge, as we've discussed before, what's most important is we come together to find opportunity in the face of that challenge. And that culture was all built and cultivated and started with one Mr. Clayton Workman. Thanks for being on today, brother.
I'm humbled, my man. It's crazy that people have that view of to me. I see myself nothing like that. I do get to reminisce about some of this sometimes, but I'm just excited to get to have an impact on people's lives, you know. You say those things, and I really take a step back and kind of tears me up a little bit, and I'm like, speechless. I get goosebumps, you know, because I feel that way about so many of our members that have helped make all this. You know, it's not me. I know people kind of see me as a leader and cultivating a lot of that, but I'm like, I'm just honored to do what I get to do, you know, to be able to help somebody to, hey, here's an opportunity. Yeah, you're kind of down. This is going on. This is life, whatever. But here, let me help you a little bit. And people take that and, much like yourself, have made it into something far beyond what I ever give anybody. You know, it's humbling. It really is on so many levels with a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's why it's so powerful, though, is because I think it's one of the reasons why it's so powerful is because you view it in that way. You know, you don't necessarily see yourself as anybody special, yet so much of what you have done is so special for so many individuals, including myself. And man, I remember clear back when I first met you was when I'd come back to the area, and I still was not 100% sober. Right. I was getting there. Mm-hmm. I would say mostly in control of you know what I was doing, and I knew I needed. I was still in a very raw, emotional, rage kind of driven place with lifting. And a lot of us go through that phase, you know. It's interesting. Maybe we'll chat about this later, but I'm pretty well out of that phase now. Like, I still get a lot of emotion that drives me, but there's never like anger. There's never rage with me anymore. Yeah. But I remember the first time I met you, I needed a hardcore gym. Like, I was not going to step one door in that purple and yellow place, or one foot inside of that purple and yellow place. I was not going to the YMCA. Like, I wanted a place that was, which come to find out, that sounds like the YMCA actually has some really good lifters in it.
They have through the years.
Yeah, but I wanted a hardcore place that people knew what they were doing. They took it seriously. They were passionate about it. And so I was just Googling online, and I found Excessive, which wasn't really my style. And then I saw this place called Monsters Bent Barbell. I saw it was down on 7th Street. So I remember driving up there just to check it out. And I go and I kind of like peek in some of the windows. I'm like, all right, this looks like a place. So I was messaging you guys online. We set up a time to meet, and I come in, and I think he gave me a little tour of the place. And Especially I saw the back powerlifting, and I saw equipment there that I'd only ever dreamed of, that I'd seen on YouTube and Instagram, and I'm like, I had no idea stuff like that existed in Parkersburg, West Virginia. So once I saw that, it was a surefire thing. I think I signed up for a year membership on the spot back when you were doing yearlies, and and so that was the first time I met you, and I immediately signed up and went to go train. But I remember thinking like, oh man, like I cannot let this guy down. Like I gotta, not that I felt like I had to like impress you necessarily, but like I gotta figure out what the standard is here, and I gotta hold the standard, you know, from mindset, from respect to other people and the equipment. And that was something I got just like right at face value. But then I think we didn't really interact a whole lot after that, because you know, you lead a crazy schedule and just didn't really see a whole lot. And back then, lifting was a very personal thing for me. I didn't talk to a lot of people back then. But I do remember one time I was deadlifting. This was when I was working toward the 500, and you were at the gym, and I think you kind of walked in, and then you were giving me, you know, like encouraged me, cheering me on, gave me some pointers that, as your pointers often do, they made a pretty quick difference, like immediately. And then I think it was in that same conversation I kind of was talking about my battles with alcohol. You talked about, you know, your sobriety and your battles with alcohol, and that's, I think, where our relationship really kicked
kind of
off.
Built a good connection in that aspect.
Yeah, and that was really, really powerful for me. And I think that's one of the skills you really have, is you're one of these people that, for whatever reason, it's very easy to confide in you with things and let you know some of the struggles we've had. And I don't know if it's just something like, I think anybody who's gone through that kind of stuff, you can kind of sense it in other people. But you're a person that I've always seen people are very willing and ready to open up to. And then you're also very good at, I think, breaking things down, breaking challenges down, and showing people like, hey, there's a path forward from this. This doesn't have to be you. This doesn't have to be forever, you know, and there's things that you can find, things that you can learn, and ways you can grow and go forward in all of this. And you're really good at particularly bringing up a lot of gym members, and you know them so well, and people who've gone through different things, sharing different experiences. What's that from your perspective? Kind of what's that all been like? Just like,
for me, as far as making connections with things with people, I'll quite often put myself out there and lead, if you will, I suppose, in that aspect. If I kind of sense, hey, this person might have had a drinking problem or in recovery or something like that, I'll open up and, hey, look, I'm 12 years now, you know, here's kind of a little bit of my path. And there's still lots of things that nobody hardly knows about me, but I got no problem putting that out there. And if that makes me a little bit vulnerable and you see that and allows you to open up, which tends to be a lot of what happens with not only the alcoholism, but just general conversation. You know, I opened up, we got a big group text with a bunch of us, and I put a lot out there the other day that I typically don't do, but for myself, it's been a lot of mental battles here lately. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to throw this out. And if that helps somebody, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with being vulnerable and putting myself out there in that aspect. And if that opens up a road that somebody else uses down the road, I'm about it. You know, I'm okay with it. Yeah. I'm at a place in my life where I'm comfortable with that. I've dealt with enough battles, fortunately, and I'm here still somehow. So I don't have a problem putting myself out there. I've made a lot of really great connections with people, and even people that just travel through. Been a couple years ago, right after we kind of opened up, but there was a gentleman came down who's actually Maurice Claret's old coach from Youngstown.
Holy cow.
And he had actually lost his job because of a DUI, and I think that he was a higher up in the education system, maybe a board of education director or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Anyway, he was kind of traveling through, and I go and I opened up a little bit with that, and he talked to me about his and why he was in the area at that point in time and a lot of that kind of stuff. You know, here's again, a random dude that I met for 10 minutes. Yeah. But hey, okay, he's battling with some of this, so if I can help in any way, I'm going to kind of throw it out there, you know? So that's kind of how I treat people in general. I really try to with that aspect.
Yeah, that's what I've always seen from my perspective. I know so many at the gym would resonate with that. And I think it's why it's drawn so many particularly like powerful people in like different ways, not even just in how strong they are physically, but powerfully driven mindset people. I think it's why we have so many extremely exceptional lifters at Monsters. Not everybody has like tons of raw natural talent necessarily, but I think we all have a strong emotional connection, a strong mental drive that drives us forward and helps us keep our mind open to potential and possibilities, and keep us striving to work harder. And especially for the young kids, it's cool, because they get to see like what's possible right in front of them. They don't just have to see it on a computer.
That's
screen.
one of the things I think we bring a lot of times, and I brag about a lot of our people a lot. I'm an older guy. I still get to run with the young bucks because I'm using gear as far as equipment goes in lifting, and I'm happy with that. I don't have a problem with that, But for me, it's about, teaching the most people a basic level that, here's something I can take with them for the rest of their life. Even much of the young people, we've talked about a lot of teenagers coming in, even Lily coming in as small as she is and getting to see, maybe not even have a clue what's actually happening. And I encourage people to bring kids to the gym in that aspect. As long as they're not causing havoc, it's not an issue at all, because I want them to see that, hey, this is a normal lifestyle as well, You don't have to do what we do or put the work into it we do or the time we do, but if you want to lift and do fitness of some sort, feel free. Don't let a kid be an excuse or stop you or something to that effect,
And that's one thing that's really meant a lot to me, particularly this past year, but I've always enjoyed seeing like little kids, as well as like the high school students coming up into it, just people at different levels. And it shows, like, even though it's, back then it was what I was looking for in like a hardcore gym, but it's just a place with very real people. I've called it its own form of church in a way.
Absolutely.
It's a place we go and congregate every single week, and we all understand each other on a level that's hard to really put into words. We're all driving towards the same kind of mission or passion, in a lot of ways. And so in a lot of ways it emulates that kind of group of people, and I think that's really cool. It's a place where people also love to bring their families and get their families involved, and I love a lot of that aspect of it as well. But it's we've spent so many hours, especially on this show, talking about what Monsters is and what it's done for us, because it really started with that conversation you and I had during deadlifts, but a lot of the lessons I learned from there in particular, once I started coming out to the Saturday squats, that's when things were really opened up to me in terms of what potential can lay out there. And pretty much everything that happened in 2023, was in some way a result of everything I'd learned from Monsters, and how I'd seen, people like you go out and build a community and chase your passion, and, be able to bring that to others in whatever way they need it. Like so much of that is what inspired a lot of what we're doing today. So.
I think you guys do a great job of presenting it out there, that we lift and love doing that, but it carries over to so much in life, and you get to build these little success blocks that are really obvious in a lifting game. You may not necessarily recognize outside of the gym, but like you just mentioned, 23 being a big year for you, and you made a lot of progress and a lot of that stuff. We're 2 years out from that, and now you see that, but in the midst of that, you probably didn't recognize any of those things going on at the time, or very minimal, and not really give them the credit and the depth they actually were.
I was just trying to keep up. 23, I felt like it was just but I think that's what I needed so much that year. I just needed like something to completely immerse myself in and just see like where could it go, and put total blind faith and trust in it, and that will always be one of the most pivotal, positive, like life-changing years of my life for me, and I'm always very thankful for it. What's wild is that was only 2 years ago now. And it feels like it might have been been a lifetime. With
to bring something else up with some of that is that's when I was going through my cancer stuff too, and you were right there kind of as a right-hand person with me the whole time, and there's another great example of family coming together and sharing that burden, if you will, of me dealing with that. That's where the family steps in. Hey, Clayton needs some help, so what are we doing? And everybody coming for my bell ringing was, if you've seen the video, left me speechless. I mean, it was dumbfounding to me. It really was. That again is one of my coolest memories. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
From that year. But it speaks to, I mean, I don't know how many gyms out there, like, something like that could happen, where whether it's the owner, I mean, because truthfully, we would have done that for anybody in the gym, but especially for you, kind of having built that precedent and opened that door for us, we had probably 15 or 20 people show up that day. And it was kind of a last minute type thing, because I don't think I knew exactly when. I don't think I knew at first you were going to have the bell ringing right then, like right when you finished. And so we found out kind of late in the game. But all it took was like a couple Facebook posts, a couple text messages, and then all of these people show up in the middle of a work day.
Right.
And, they're right there to cheer you on and surprise you and give reinforcement and support in that way. And that's what we talked about with Paul last week. It's like nobody like sees challenge and they're like, oh, I can't do that, or we can't work through that. They see challenge and they're like, okay, how do we make this happen?
It's another opportunity, like you mentioned previously with things. Yeah.
And that's been such a powerful mindset for me to have carrying forward in my life. And I think the reason we're all so open to that and why it can happen so quickly and so easily is because we gather on a regular basis, a lot of us on a weekly basis, if not more often than that. And we're all working through just that. We're all working through
a challenge,
massive challenge. Even though it's, it's not always physical. A lot of times you go in, there's mental challenges, emotional challenges, there's all kinds of stuff going on. We all work through that together in our own way. And when you come out the other side of that, like you can't, I don't know that I've ever left a training session feeling like in a worse spot mentally or emotionally.
100%.
Maybe physically.
Yeah.
But even physically, a lot of times you feel good walking away. But you always feel like you've gained something, like you've built something, you've worked through something. And so by doing that on a regular basis, when these big challenges in life come up that we can't control or we don't choose, it sets us up for so much of a more experienced spot to be able to deal with that.
I think it kind of lays out a blueprint, if you will, of how to deal something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe is a good term for it or whatever. I don't know exactly, but I think as a gym and a community, that's one of the things we get to do as a group and a team or a family, whatever label you like to put on that again, we get to do on a regular basis, that is incredible. We mention quite often about our Saturday morning squat crew, and I'm like, hey, what do you got today? I got 1,000. Oh, load it up. Let's go. You sure you can do it? I don't know, but hey, you guys got me, so we'll find out,
Yeah, and that's what I love on those days. And we, I think talking about that ability to just face challenge, find opportunity, and overcome it, I think that's a skill you can build up over a short period of time. You can get a lot better at it, but it's also something you can build over years and years and years of practice. And I think that's something we all definitely see, and I know myself, like I definitely see, and I respect that in you a lot, because you said you've been competing for 12 years.
12 years, I believe. Somewhere.
And how long have you been just
lifting?
Training? Yeah, lifting.
About 25.
25. That's
give or take. Probably a little longer than that now. But
yeah. That's wild. Just to like see that level of experience in something. But if you think about how we talk about, you've been overcoming challenge and finding opportunity on a very regular basis for competitively over a decade,
right?
And at least from a recreational standpoint, over 2 decades
right
now. And so it makes a lot of these challenges. Like I remember when you were first diagnosed, not that it wasn't hard, not that it wasn't scary, because at first they thought it was something like really serious, not that yours wasn't serious.
Right. I totally
much
understand.
more survivable than what we thought you had initially.
Right.
But even the whole time, not that you never felt fear with it, but you never let it shut you down. You never stopped moving forward. You never gave up direction. You never gave up the passion and purpose you had for your life.
Yeah, something with that. Again, that initial diagnosis was not real great long term. 8 to 10 year prognosis, and that was about it. So my mind immediately went to, okay, what happens to the gym and what we've built in that aspect? And Jen's amazing. I'm like, is that something she wants to carry, and continue? And try to make, I was immediately in my mind started trying to make some of those plans. Okay, when and if this does happen, what's our next step in that aspect? It wasn't a matter of, oh no, my life's ending. It was a matter of, okay, what's the next step with this? Again, it's another opportunity, a very rough opportunity, but hey, to me, that was one of the next steps I really need to take into consideration. Fortunately, that wasn't the actual diagnosis when it came down to it, and that load lightened tremendously on me because that wasn't something that I needed to deal with immediately because not knowing what was going to happen, Yeah. So I decided to compete again at that point. I think I was going to regardless. It wouldn't have mattered, probably. Yeah. But that was one of the things that I wanted to show people, hey, life doesn't have to end because you have a diagnosis, You can still do what you love and still show people those things. And I know you've been phenomenal at that. And one of those reasons I continue to do that,
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing to realize is you never have to, that's why we use the phrase limitations don't exist. Because, yes, there are times where, for whatever reason, due to injury or health or whatever, maybe you are not going to be at your very highest potential you've ever been. That's going to happen. But there's no reason you can't go out there and compete and maybe squat one plate, maybe you squat the bar, whatever it is. But it's just, I think there's something so big to just opening the mind up to, I've got this challenge. It sucks. It's horrible. It's awful. Whatever it is. But it doesn't have to totally shut down everything I love.
100%.
It doesn't have to totally take me away from that. And I think just making that switch and that leap in your brain, I know for me especially, but I think for pretty much everybody, it just having that little path forward or that giving yourself permission to still pursue those things you love, even if it may not be at the highest level. And the thing that I've learned is you are going to learn and gain so much in so many other areas, even if it's not your peak physical performance. When I was in there those days when I broke my real foot and trying to box squat on my prosthetic leg.
Who wouldn't do that, right?
Yeah, I was just literally saying is there I was just trying to prove a point almost to myself more than anybody else that I'm going to keep doing this some way, somehow, and find a way to make this happen just because I believe so passionately. There's always a way to do that. And I think you especially demonstrated that at this meet you guys did 2 weeks ago, because you said you've been competing for 12 years now. And roughly how many meets would you guess that is?
I probably got 30-ish under my belt, give or take a little.
Yeah, that's
2 to 3 a year, pretty average for me.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Sometimes more, but yeah.
So sometimes probably 30 to 40 in that range. And in that time, you gain so much experience, just like we talked about with lifting. You get in this regular cycle of going through and overcoming challenge. And now you've built that skill up to the point over a decade, over 2 decades, to where it's just such a, I don't want to say an easy process, but almost like an instinctive process that you have overcome so many challenges so many times that now you just know immediately how to move forward. And that's really the goal we need to get to. Whenever these challenges come up, there's always opportunity on the other side, but how can we shorten that window as much as possible from this challenge is here, this sucks, how am I going to find the opportunity?
I might not know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to go forward regardless.
And you've done it enough times that and you've been able to build up faith that there is a way forward. There is something there. You're going to figure something out, even if you don't immediately know what it is in the moment. I think that's the biggest thing, because what gets us tripped up is when we feel there's not a path forward, or I'm not going to be able to figure this out, which is an easy place to slip into if you haven't worked on that kind of mental, emotional, spiritual side.
That's one of the things I try to bring to everybody that I can. There's always an opportunity. It may not be the best opportunity to move forward, but there's always an opportunity, whatever that may be. Hey, your car broke down. Okay, what can we do to help? What can we do to make that better? What do you need next? It doesn't have to end right here. What's the next step? It blew up. Okay, what can we do? What's our next step? It doesn't have to stop there. What's the next step?
Do you need a tow? Do you need a ride?
Whatever it is.
And just finding that next step will lead to the next step after that. And it gives you a path forward, even if it's a hard path to walk or a difficult path to go down.
It opens that door and that opportunity at least.
That forward movement, and this is something we've talked about the last several episodes now, that forward movement is really the only answer, because you'll never find a solution staying exactly where you are right now. And honestly, life won't even allow for that. You can't stay in the same position, it's just by default. So you have to move forward. So finding that next step as quickly as possible, I think, is really one of the most powerful skills we can generate. And you demonstrated that so many times over this entire prep. There's so many stories that I love telling from this prep, but probably the number one, and you did this, I've seen you do this before, but I think you did it more times this prep than I've ever seen before, because you do shift work as well,
right,
on top of running a gym and on top of promoting powerlifting and doing your own training, and leading as strong of a family life. You do so many things, you're involved in so many things, but you also do a crazy shift work schedule on top of that, which is about the most total opposite thing as you would want
that's
for
ideal.
optimal performance and recovery.
Yeah.
But you make it work in a way that I've almost never seen before, because when we came in, I don't even remember where exactly it was in prep. I think it was more in the second half, getting close to the competition. Right. You came in, and we all came in, I think, a little bit. One of those days we came in like 7:30. And, I come in, I'm chatting with you about what you got today, and you're like, yeah, I got about 700 or so. And I'm like, what? Like, you're going to put 700 pounds on your back after just coming off a night shift, and it's like your third night shift in a row.
Have a minute of sleep.
And you don't come home and sleep for 8 hours when you work night shift. You're lucky you get like 2 or 3 hours total.
Probably about 4 for the day on the average when I work nights.
Yeah. So you're doing stuff all day long, even when you work the night shift. So you're deep in sleep deprivation at this point, which is one of the things that can shut people down the quickest physically. There can't be any way to get perfect nutrition when you're going through that, So in a lot of ways, you are not like, I don't know anybody who would feel comfortable stepping under 700 pounds without pretty well-designed circumstances around that. Right. But you just come in, you're like, this is what I'm prescribed, this is what I got to do, and you're ready to go forward. It
was well-designed in my mind, though. I had my crew there, and, hey, this is what I'm doing, guys. We step things up a little bit early. I get off work at 6:30, met everybody at the gym at 7-ish. We really get rolling about 7:30 or so, and, hey, this is the game plan, so let's do what we can to get there,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a really good point, because not only does the crew bring a strong, physical presence in the support of being able to help load plates and spot and run the mono and keep you safe and watch out for certain things. That is invaluable right there from a safety perspective. But I think it even goes beyond that. Like, there's an essence of mindset and spirit that the crew brings. That there is no squat day I've ever had that's been outside of Saturday squats that even matches even my worst day inside of Saturday
the
squats.
Energy is intense there. There's a little bit of competitiveness, but there's always the camaraderie and the safety that is brought, particularly for me competing in gear at this point, is a lot. Most people don't understand those games, but there's so much pressure and so many minute details at that top end that simply picking the bar or unracking it is a chore. And there's so much, and the crew is so phenomenal. They see me make a pick, and if it's off, they're there.
Yeah.
We've had times where there's 700 on the bar, maybe a little bit more. I pick it, and I'm wobbling, and you guys grab me, we rack it, we reset, and we go,
Yeah.
I feel the most comfortable with that group of people. If I had that group of people on meet day, even this prep, I probably would have been much better off.
Yeah.
That was definitely part, I'm sure we'll dive more into, but I was not at my normal meet day by no means. I mean, there's a lot of variables, and I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit more, but that was one of those things that I had a great group of people there supporting us. There was no doubt, and part of our morning crew was there, but that wasn't our spot and loading crew on the platform that day,
Yeah. And that makes so much difference that I think even maybe a lot of seasoned powerlifters don't even recognize if they aren't blessed to have a crew like that, because there's a lot of great powerlifters out there that they do everything alone, and they don't know what it's like to have necessarily that crew of people and what it brings, not just from a physical support standpoint, but from a mental, emotional, spiritual support standpoint. And that's why those Saturday squats are so invaluable. And I think all of us are kind of set up now to where we never do our biggest lifts outside of there.
It's hard to. It just is.
And it's because there's just so much missing from the essence of that lift when we're not there.
I think it's not only the emotional and physical and all those things, but hey, we want to show everybody that this is where we're at now. You know, this is what our group has done. It's not just me. I don't see it that way, and I know you feel the same way, and I know many of our other guys do. You know, it's not about me. It's about our group and what we're doing. You know.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important. I think why it's kept up for so long at the level it does. You know, we go through phases where, like, I've been in a phase where I've been working Saturdays like crazy. I've not been able to make it out. You know, we go through phases where maybe there's not as many people there, or maybe we've got a ton of people there. You know, it kind of ebbs and flows sometimes, but it always holds consistent that if I've got a Saturday and I'm not out of town or I'm not at work, I'm there. Like, there's just no...
I think that's everybody with our crew. It really is.
There's just no question about that whatsoever. And it's really such a powerful thing to have that. But I guess I'd say, like, for this prep specifically, and maybe I just hadn't known enough to be able to pay attention enough to other preps. This prep just felt different to me.
It was like, a lot different to me. I was working with the different federation, a few different little rules and things that I was concerned with, different equipment. Actually, again, meet day, different bars even than what we're typically used to. So there's a lot of variables there that just being unsure about. In the prep itself, you know, you were mentioning, I think I came in a couple times straight up night shift and hit big numbers because that's what I had to do this go around. In the past, I've taken that Saturday off and I wasn't able to do that this go around. So I was like, okay, here's the hand I'm dealt. What can I do? Again, it's that next step moving forward kind of mentality of, okay, this is what I got to do. My grade's going to be there. This is what I'm doing, you know?
Yeah. And that was the biggest shift I noticed is you've always been great at that mentality of like, I've got to do this, so we're going to make it happen. But I think this prep more than ever before, like you just like, there was just no lag time, no questions, no second guessing. No. It was just like straightforward, whatever you need to make happen, whatever you're going to make happen. And there was that one day, and this was my favorite day, the day I got most fired up about. You'd probably remember the numbers better than I would, but you'd gone to like, I think mid or upper sixes, and something was really shaky. You didn't feel stable, or something. You didn't feel good. Do you remember this day? Maybe you could walk us through better.
There was a couple, but I think I remember the day you're talking about. There's days my CNS system's just shot at that point, especially from lack of sleep and a lot of those things. And for me, quite often, making that pick, what I was just talking about, is actually the most difficult of that lift. You know, I'll shake and my whole body's like, what the hell are we doing? And my mentality at that point is, and my crew's got me, I got it off the rack now, let's go. Yeah. It doesn't matter. Yeah. You know, if I fail, they got me. I ain't worried about it. But that was definitely my mentality. I remember a couple of those days. I think 670, 680 probably that day, somewhere in that ballpark, just before we were cracking the sevens. I don't remember, I think that day on racking 600, and I think I had been wrapped at that point. We were starting to dive into my wraps. And you get your plates rattling. I mean, it was that extreme.
It was that
and
shaky.
We're still taking that lift. And everybody's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, it sucks. My CNS is shot, but we're going to make it go, you know? This is what I have to do.
Yeah. Well, there was one day specifically where you picked a number that I thought was going to be like your top lift of the day. And I can't remember if like the setup wasn't right, the pick something wasn't right, or maybe your CNS just wasn't taking it at that moment or whatever. And so you like re-racked it. And, you know, in my brain, I'm thinking like, okay, you know, like he went for it, wasn't there today, wasn't safe for good lift. So we're just going to call it there. In my head, that's just kind of default what I'm thinking. And then you're like, all right, let's add these plates to it. Like, what? And immediately when I see that, you're like, all right, let's go up.
Yeah.
And I'm immediately like getting so fired up because that is the thing that will like trigger me in the most positive way, send me from 0 to 100 in excitement is seeing people overcome that, because to me that's like what we mean when we say the impossible. Like you just picked, I don't remember exactly what it was, but let's just call it 675 or something. It was somewhere around there, mid to high sixes, and it something wasn't right about it, so you put it back. Pretty much everybody would have, and you know, for justifiable reasons, would have just said, all right, let's call it there. It's just not happened today. But you're just immediately like, no, we're going up.
You went ahead and hit the next set. I remember that.
And then you hit a freaking amazing rep at like, I think it was right around 700. Yeah. And those moments to me are what I basically live so much of my life for. Those impossible moments where by all normal standards, you should shut it down, turn it in for the day.
Right.
But you find more potential within yourself than should be able to be there.
Again, it's the group of people I have that stand behind me and drive me quite often with situations like that, where that was the prescribed number that day. I was going to give it a try at least, you know. And again, my crew's got me, so I'm confident in that. Even if I'm not confident in myself at that point, hey, let's go. You know, that's just how it is. You know, I'll take it back to the Americas, where I missed my first 2 deadlifts. Mm-hmm. At my opener, 630-ish, I think, might have been 600. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head. But I know I made a 30-pound jump to my 3rd attempt and smoked it. Yeah. You know, but I had to take a walk and put myself in check. And I've seen a lot of experienced lifters not be able to do that. Mm-hmm. You know, where I'm lucky that I've had these challenges and these opportunities in life to learn what I need to do mentally to make those things happen, you know. Again, I'll die a little cheat from the meet we just did. You know, we go to weigh-ins. I use a band shirt when I compete. Find out at the weigh-ins literally that they don't even have a class for that in my federation, in this federation. And I'm like, when I signed up, there was an unlimited class. I could have swore, and the other couple guys that I've talked to said the same thing. Yeah. He's like, hey, there was an unlimited. I'm like, okay, it is what it is. What are we going to do? So during weigh-ins, you got to give your openers and all that stuff. So I threw a low number out, 315, 319, whatever like that, something I'm very confident that I can hit consistently, no issues whatsoever. I'm like, that's an easy one for me. I'll throw that out there, and we'll go from there, you know. So that, again, one of those challenges and opportunities that things are, okay, it's not what I wanted it to be or what I thought it would be. And the other gentleman that was with me that was going to be competing in gear that day was like, man, he told me, he's like, I'm ready to go home if I can't. I'm like, no, we're not doing that, dude. We're still here. We're still going to have fun. We're still going to do what we do, you know, and end up still being a good solid meet for everybody that was there, you know. Didn't hit my bench numbers I wanted, obviously, but still had a good bench day. I shut it down after my 2nd attempt because I thought that was best. Hadn't been benching raw hardly at all. Alone at the top end of my weight. Felt my left shoulder and elbow wiggle around a little bit. Like, I'm just going to call it there. Another 20 pounds ain't going to matter at this federation, at this level, at this competition, you know. So shut down, go on, the next one, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is the moment of this meet that, I mean, I hated it for you that it happened, but I loved it at the same time so much for what it demonstrates.
Yeah. Again, it's another one of those opportunities that I can show that, hey, whatever's going on don't mean you still can't keep going, you know.
Yeah, and you and Paul were both going through that from different perspectives that day. Right. But you both overcame and put out just an incredible meet, especially, not even despite the circumstances, just in general. Was an incredible meet, but then you add that challenge you were facing on top of it that I think we're really uniquely good at Monsters, but I think would break or tear down or ruin the meet for so many other people. Like you say, there was that other guy. It's like, well, I'm ready to go home now. Yeah. And to lay it out for some of you guys who are not powerlifters or, you know, maybe don't understand some of the nuance here or exactly what this situation means. Basically, you were competing in what's called a geared powerlifting class, where you use special equipment to help ourselves be able to withstand some very extreme pressures of very high amounts of weight. Yeah. And it's a totally different type of powerlifting from raw lifting. It doesn't just, raw lifting being where you just kind of lift with, you may use like a knee sleeve or like a belt or something like that for support, but it's pretty much your body supporting all the weight and doing all the work. Whereas with the geared lifting, it's kind of like the difference between like a 100-meter sprint and going in a NASCAR car. Right. Like, you know, you can obviously go a lot faster in a NASCAR car, but it does not make that race any easier because not only are the stakes infinitely higher, you, as far as like the margin for error goes way down, but everything's happening at a much higher intensity level that makes it almost to the point it's almost a different sport entirely.
In my opinion, it is in a lot of ways. Most people are pretty familiar with racing of some sort. I kind of relate it to racing. You know, there's your local dirt track, there's IndyCar, there's NASCAR, there's Top Fuel, and I'm like, geared lifting is much like that. People are like, oh, it's because he's got a bench shirt on. Yeah. Well, put a bench shirt on and see what it feels like. You've been on one at this point, you know. You made a great description of it makes you feel like a tube of toothpaste, you know. And I'm like, that's perfect. And the squat suit and that stuff is even more intense to me, because when I got that on, when I got my suit on and my straps are up and I crawl under 700 pounds, I get my initial breath and I can't get another breath.
Yeah.
You know, I got to go right now because that pressure and that load is so intense. And the gear is restrictive, so you get your air and you go. Mm-hmm. And much like the bench is a lot the same. Once you get that bar out there and there's 400, 500 pounds, whatever that number is exactly, that gear is compressing you. And that's the whole idea of what it does. I mean, it's compression on your body, and that's how it works. Basically, you know, that's ultimately what it is. Yeah. You know, take your toothpaste, leave the lid on it, and squeeze it as hard as you can. Mm-hmm. That's much what it's like, you know.
Yeah. It's just a device that, like, it doesn't make it easier. It just facilitates a much higher intensity level.
For me, it's let me continue at my previous level when I was younger, and not have to deal with some of the injuries because it is supportive and some of those kind of things, and continue to do some of the weights and even increase some of the weights that I've done previously, you know.
And I think you see that in that analogy I use, like, your Olympic level 100-meter sprinters are going to be very young, very healthy, very fit athletes, whereas a lot of your top level NASCAR drivers are generally a little older, much more experienced, because that's what it takes to compete
to get there
at that level of intensity. And so it's just kind of a not that all geared powerlifters are older and vice versa, but generally you need significant, like somebody who's been training a year or 2 years generally can't just hop straight in the shirt.
It takes a lot more experience, and even for me, I'm still learning my stuff constantly. I think there's a lot more potential in the gear I'm using, but it's me trying to learn that, because there is such a small margin for error. You've seen me squat and bench a lot, and there's constant adjustments being made that whole time, you know. You can see my butt and my hips and my knees and things shifting all over the place. And if you, again, I shared one of my videos from the actual competition. If you look at my bar path on the squat I got, I'm like, I don't know how I got that squat. That bar probably moves forward and backward a foot, where it's typically pretty up and down. And I'm like, but I'm making all kinds of adjustments and trying to get depth and out on my way up, literally halfway through my squat, and I'm just trying to finish standing up with and hope to God to get back to the rack.
And just while you're making all those adjustments, just like a NASCAR driver, you are under an amount of pressure and amount of weight that your body by itself could not withstand. Yeah. Just like those drivers going at speeds they could not go just by themselves. Right. And so it creates this situation where the stakes are so high, and you have to have the experience and be able to step back and see, and not even just see and decide, but like instinctively know where you need to make adjustments, where things need to happen, you know, what kind of things, where things need to go, so that you don't drop the weight or let it crush you or let it injure you. But for the geared lifting, like basically what Clayton was showing up to do is he has, you know, a squat suit, and there's different divisions within geared lifting as well. So when he says he signed up for Unlimited, he signed up for a class where basically he could use pretty much
anything you bring,
whatever equipment he wants, and it's all about like how much weight can you move. We're not really worried about, you know, which division this equipment falls in. It's more about how much weight can you move, and that's about, you know, the highest stakes, highest intensity level we could do. It's kind of like, you know, showing up to, if you show up to a NASCAR race with just bring any car you want, you know, but we want you to go, whoever can go as fast as humanly possible. We don't care about the specifications. We don't care about, you know, what turbos you're using or superchargers. It's all about who can go as fast as possible. It'd be kind of like that analogy. And what Clayton was showing up to do, he showed up with a shirt, bench shirt that he was going to do bench press in, that he's been training in for years now. And it's, you know, a specific style shirt that requires a specific style of bench pressing. And, you know, you have to build up a certain amount of experience in that. It works very different from other shirts. It'd be like if somebody showed up to a NASCAR race that was designed where anybody could bring any car. We just want you to go as fast as possible. And then say he drove up with a car, and then they're like, oh no, wait, you actually can't use that specific car. Like, say everybody else was all gas and his was like an electric hybrid, had a hybrid motor, and then the V8 or V12 kicks over, and they say, but you can use any car you want, but you just can't use that specific one. Well, it's like, what do you do at that point? Because it's not like you can just go out and you can't just go out
buy another car and jump in,
get a different car and hop in it because you've been training this one forever, and totally different styles, totally different output. So I give that analogy just to explain to you guys kind of what was happening. But many people would say, well, I can't compete without this shirt, so I'm just going to call it a wrap and go home and let it eat at them and be frustrated and angry and, let it consume their lives for the next however long. But Clayton was just immediately like, all right, well, I can still come out and bench. I don't necessarily need this bench shirt or this car. Going back to the analogy, it'd be like a NASCAR driver showing up and like, I'm still going to foot race, just because it's better than doing nothing.
Yep.
But beyond that, he recognized, well, I got 2 whole other lifts I can still compete in. I don't need to throw the whole meat away just because I can't use this specific bench press shirt. Right. I can still squat and I can still deadlift and I can still find my highest potential in those areas.
Right.
And that is a very powerful, profound jump to be able to make. And anybody who's ever competed in powerlifting will 100% know that. But think about, for anybody who's not a powerlifter or even a lifter at all, think about any sport that you've competed in. If it's running, say you showed up and you were running in carbon shoes the whole time and found out you can't use carbon shoes, or find out you can't use shoes at all and you got to run it barefoot,
I got a quick analogy since we were talking about those in the different sports and that kind of stuff, and comparing as geared lifting as a different sport almost as powerlifting and raw lifting at least. It'd be like you're showing up to play a basketball game, you got your basketball gear, and you find out it's a tennis match. You're like, okay, I'm still going to play tennis. Yeah.
Exactly. That's a better analogy, honestly, because it's like totally different. Well, honestly, like a different set of rules, different format, different setup, like totally everything, all the entire game changes when you go from raw lifting without all this gear and support and equipment to geared lifting, which has all this, different type of supportive equipment. The whole game changes. It's not like, and I've just learned this myself just this year, having just been in a bench shirt. I've still never been in like a squat suit or anything like that. And I know just from my limited time in it, totally different sport, totally different game. Everything changes. And so that's what he was faced with, this thing he'd been working for, put unbelievable amounts of time, energy, money, resources into, and he shows up that day, and you had a fantastic prep this time, and you were set to throw up some really massive
really good numbers.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, this stuff that you're hoping for, this 2,000 pound total you were hoping for, which is a big milestone for lifters, you just all of a sudden are faced with, well, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's not even on the table at all at this point.
And so many people would say, oh, well, that's not on the table, so I'm just going to go home and throw in the towel and not even make that happen. Like, but you made that shift so quickly. And I know we talked about like how your experience and, just the path of training itself can help you do that. But what's going like through your mind that day? You walk up to that table, you find it out, and how do you make that shift? What's that process look like?
There was a couple variables for me. Me being the owner of the monsters, if you will, I feel like I'm leading people. I'm like, I got to continue to do this no matter what. But there's also the side of, hey, I'm there for the experience and the time with my people. You only get a handful of those type of opportunities per year, let's say, in competing case, whatever it is, especially in powerlifting. Most of us 2 or 3 meets a year, and that's it, So you only get a handful of those opportunities. Here's 10, 12 weeks worth of prep into it, money in PT and massage, and again, and time away from family. And again, we talked earlier before we started the podcast, most of us, when we're competition time, we're probably putting 15 to 20 hours a week in pretty easily getting ready. Okay, here's game day. I'm not going to throw all that away. It's just another variable. And again, we had a good crew of people show up for us, so I'm like, I still got to put a show on, I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to go do it, or at least put that effort into it, I know we talked previously about your upcoming big squat you're going to hit, and I'm like, you're going to try it no matter what, that's your mindset. I totally understand that, and that was much my mindset that day. Is like, okay, I'm still going to go, I'm still going to do what I'm going to do, I'll still get to spend time with my people and all those things. That's a much bigger factor to me in my life at this point than my numbers I put up that day. It's an opportunity for me to go do what I love and get to be with my people. That's what it comes down to. And be in a new environment, in a whole different gym, and a whole different group of people that have never seen me, period, or know who I am necessarily, but I'm sure most of them remember us now. And it's not because we put up gigantic numbers. We were solid, absolutely did great, but Dave Hoff was the head judge. Dave's got the all-time multiply total at 3115, I believe, or close to that. So, and Dave, I have to tell this little quick story. After my squat, I'm damn near out of it. It was a rough morning for me for whatever reason. There was a lot of anxiety, a lot of anxiousness. I don't know if it was because of all the differences, but I missed my opener. I got off balance a little bit. My second attempt, I'm sweating bullets all morning for whatever reason. My second attempt, still my opener, should be an easy weight that I've hit quite often, especially in this prep. And it was everything I had to pick that bar. Again, it was one of those things where I'm shaking and not knowing exactly what's going on, but I'm still going to make this right. I climb from out of the squat bar, pop my wraps on the platform. I'm hanging on the bar, trying to get my head back right. And Dave spits out his line, "Welcome to powerlifting." I'm like, thanks, Dave. My head's barely working, but I heard that line.
Yep.
I'm like,
after you've been competing for 12 years, he's still spitting that line out to you.
And I'm like, that's awesome. That's how he opens the West Side versus the World movie. So it was one of those things that definitely sticks in my head and will forever. But
and I well, it's like we were talking about yesterday. One of the things that has just filled me so much passion, so much love, and keeps me driving forward, and always will keep me involved in powerlifting in one way, shape, or form, whatever it is. It'll always be a part of my life. The reason is because I won't say there's no other sport like it, but I'm not aware of any other sport where every single time it comes down to seconds. Like that tiny of a win. And it's not like where, swimming's kind of that way, where the difference in the very, very top people are measured in hundreds of seconds. Right. But that race occurs over several minutes, or, maybe several tens of seconds. But with powerlifting, it's like everything has to line up absolutely 100% perfectly for 15 seconds, or however the long the lift takes. And if one small thing goes out of line, it can shut that entire attempt down. And you just don't know necessarily what you're going to show up with that day, if your body's going to be acting really weird, out of normal. And you're a guy who's done this for 12 years competitively. Like, you've got a pretty good system built up on exactly how you need to line yourself up for meet day. And even still, something unexpected like that can come up, but you still have to climb under a weight that could absolutely crush you. A weight that you've done that before. You've done more than that. You've had more than that on your back before, but it's still something that it's just a totally unique weight that at that level of intensity could absolutely crush you if something went disastrously wrong. And you've got to overcome that mental barrier. That's the biggest thing for me, is like, it's not like endurance running where you'll have really hard mental times and then easier times and then hard mental times and then easier times, but the whole race still matters. This is like everything has to be locked in 100% mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually for 15 seconds. And it demands absolutely everything from you. And when you pick that weight, and what was your top squat?
672.
672. So when you've got 672 pounds on your back, there's no room for anything else in the entire world of your existence to matter in that moment.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that actually draws so many of us to powerlifting, though, there's all this noise, if you will, all the time going on. I leave a very busy life, and I know you do as well. So for that 15 seconds, or let's say that minute, we're getting ready for that attempt, we got to take everything else out to be able to go do that at that point. Because again, let's just say it's 300 pounds. That weight will kill you. You know, if things don't go right, people have died with much, much less.
Yeah.
So that weight would kill you, literally. So I got to be mind right and connected to my body the best that I can do, you know? And I didn't live up to my potential that day. I know that, but that's all I had that day, and I was okay with that. I passed on my third attempt squat. I passed on my third attempt bench because there was no more in the tank at that point that I felt safe with, you know? And that's one of the things I'm fortunate with my experience and seeing other lifters do that. I've always had in my head, why wouldn't you ever take a third attempt? If you got the opportunity of fourth, until you get to that super high level, why wouldn't you take a fourth attempt? Where now I would know that, hey, that's all I got that day. I'm okay with shutting down there, and let's save it for later, which paid off in the end for my deadlift. So,
yeah, because you have more lifts to hit that day.
Right.
You've got more squats to do in the next several weeks, months, years, you know, of your life. And the thing, you know what? I don't know that we've ever actually directly spoken this on the channel before. It's definitely past due, given how much we talk about that word potential. But potential exists under a set of circumstances.
Right.
So you can look at the long game potential of, like, in my lifetime, what is my maximum potential if I put 100% of myself into it and pull out every possible thing I can? Like, what is what many people would call, like, your genetic potential? Right. Because, like, you and I are never gonna beat LeBron James in basketball. Right. Like, we're not even gonna face up to him, because we just that's difference in genetic potential, and we could work our whole lives and still never be as good as if he never trained a day in his life for basketball. And so that's where genetic potential comes down to. But what we're most interested in is more of like a circumstantial potential. We'll have to come up with a good phrase for it that kind of encompasses everything. And because what you brought up there is, you may not have hit that day your genetic potential in powerlifting, like what you know you're truly capable of if everything lines up perfectly. But I'll be honest, I'm personally much less interested in that kind of potential. Yeah, it's really cool to go out and see, like, have everything line up perfectly, and, you know, just everything happens as it should, and you hit this very, very highest level for yourself. But what I always love are the moments, like we described in training earlier, where you're coming off night shift, you're not adequately fueled, definitely not adequately rested. You know, you miss an attempt for whatever reason, then you have to go even heavier, even though you missed you missed an attempt at a lighter weight. And those are those moments where it seems like there's no reason this should happen right now. Like, there's no reason you should be able to squat 672 with what your body was giving you that day. But you find a way, using mental, emotional, spiritual, skills, strategy, strength, whatever it is, you find a way to tap into that and pull out a higher level of physical potential than you should be able to give in that circumstance, given those conditions. And those are the moments I am just most fascinated with, most in love with, because those are the moments I think really speak to what's beyond just the plain genetic potential.
I think for me, you get to a point that it's easy when everything's great. What is it when it's hard? You know, and that, again, I see those as opportunities, you know. Go back a little bit, the cancer I've dealt with, being an alcoholic I dealt with, growing up with a single parent much of my life. My stepdad actually passing away during this prep, you know. There was a lot of variables in there where, okay, I had a really good prep, but there's a lot of variables in there that, hey, these are all playing into this prep. And, okay, what's the next step? What's the next step? You know, what's the next step? That's for me. And, again, meet day's much that same, you know. I'm planning ahead for the day when I scratch that third attempt. I could have made a small jump, you know, and should have been able to hit it, and probably may have. But to me, it wasn't worth that risk necessarily. Versus, okay, I still got the rest of the day I have to go.
Mm-hmm.
So shut down, take a little extra rest, get ready for the next.
Yeah, and that's where I have that love for powerlifting, because I think it's, for me, the sport I found that emulates life more than anything else. Like, there are moments where you're going to have, and it probably traces back to me sitting in that doctor's room, getting that diagnosis at 18 years old, when, I had just received acceptance to, at the time, what was my dream school, my dreams program. Like, everything, my life was lined up perfectly for the future, and then all of it comes crashing down. And
you ever thought, and I have, from the outside, of what would you be like if you never had those situations?
Oh no, yeah. I've thought about that a lot, because, and we've talked about on the show before, how if you go down this path for long enough and commit yourself to it fully enough, our mission and vision of what we talk about on the show, you will get to a point where, I can't remember if it was Leanne we were talking to about that. It was one of our guests we were talking to about this. You can get to a point where, even if you don't become like thankful that it happened, which you can get to that point in certain circumstances as well, and you may not wish it on anybody else ever. You may not want anybody to ever have to go through it. But we talked about developing gratitude for maybe not the circumstance itself, but for what it taught you, what it exposed you to, what you learned from it. And for me, I would take it as far as, I am thankful that happened to me. I have a lot of gratitude for it, because I know exactly what my life would look like if that hadn't happened. And it is not a version of myself that I respect nearly as much, and it's not a life I would have wanted.
I totally agree. Again, people look at different things in life many different ways, and they regret things and whatever, and I'm like, I'm a person that I can't say honestly regret anything in my life that's happened to me or whatever. There's been a lot of these different challenges and opportunities, again, that it's made me who I am. It made the gym who it is, and on and on and on. And that aspect that I'm like, I'm literally, and again, I shared this with you yesterday, driving down the road, following my wife, we're getting to go eat dinner or breakfast after squats, and she's got our logo on the back of her car. And I'm like, for whatever reason, it hit me like, again, I think this quite often, like, how do we get here? And it's because of these opportunities that we're here. And much like you guys, and I feel the same way with your situation with the leg and whatnot. And I know we chatted a little bit previously about that, but you wouldn't be where you're at now in life if those things didn't happen. That's why I don't have those regrets in life, I've been through a lot of different things in life, a few divorces and all that kind of craziness, but I'm where I'm supposed to be at this point, getting to do things that I never would have thought I would have got to have done, This is the gym itself. Everybody's like, oh, you always wanted a gym. I was like, I never wanted a gym. That never was on the radar, but it got to a place that, okay, I want me and my people to be able to lift the way we want to and not be an issue. And we're not some secret private club or anything like that. And we could be, but that's not who we are. We want to give this to as many people as we can. Whether you compete or not, whether it's bodybuilding, powerlifting, CrossFit, Olympic lifting, running, tennis, anything. We welcome everybody that has goals in life, and want to be better. That's the goal, at the end of the day. It's what can we do to help you be better.
And that's a really important point to bring up, and that's why our messages are, our main slogan, our main point, our main piece we give people is that line of be impossible. And it's not do the impossible. Because there's several reasons, but along the lines of like what you talked about, taking these hardest moments of our life, these greatest challenges, and getting to a place where you have either built tremendous good from it, or maybe you even develop a sense of gratitude for it having happened because of how much positivity it's brought your life. That doesn't happen by default. Like, you would not have been able to just switch gears so quickly in that meet once you find out you can't use your shirt by default.
Right.
Like, just because you battled alcoholism doesn't mean you would have gone on to become an incredibly experienced powerlifter
Right.
and own a gym, and like
Right.
all good things don't happen from difficult things by default.
Right.
You have to build that.
Right.
And you have the opportunity to build it, but you still have to put in work and learning and failing and succeeding and all this entire process that is one of the hardest yet will be the most rewarding things you ever do in your life to create that. And I think it's also important for us to recognize that side of things as well, because when I got that diagnosis in the doctor's office, I could have completely crumpled and then become very resentful and very negative and let that drive the entire rest of my life. And I could have gone on disability and decided that my life wasn't worth living and everything was taken from me. And that could have been my path.
Right.
And there was a long time I walked down a very negative path. I went down that path for a long time after I battled the disease, not due to what happened to me, but mostly due to a loss of purpose once I wasn't fighting it anymore. But we are open to those negative paths just as much as we are open to potential of those positive paths as well. And the whole meaning behind Be Impossible is building that person who is able to overcome that challenge, no matter what it is. And just like you brought up about the meat prep and everything that came through that and everything that's come up through your whole life, that is, and why you were able to make that shift so quickly is you understand that it is all about the process, the journey. It's all about creating that person. It's not even just about the journey. It's about creating the person through that journey who is able to overcome these things. And when you keep that your main focus, there's no challenge you can face in life. There's no amount of hardship you can face in life that you won't find opportunity in. And I know that's a very serious statement, and I sometimes struggle making statements like that given what I know some of our guests and some people in this world have faced.
Right.
But I do believe that's still true. There's always opportunity, because there are things that are so difficult, so hard, so horrific and horrendous that different people can experience in life, that I do believe there are certain things you will never come to a place of thankfulness or gratitude for. But even those people who we have been honored to learn from on this show and be able to share their story, even those people have found opportunity and ways to create good from it, because that situation, that challenge, that hardship, it's not changing once it's happened. Like, your cancer isn't just magically going away once you have it. Those you've lost are not just magically coming back to life. But even the people who on this show have gone through life's greatest of tragedies, they have found a way to create an opportunity from it, because it's not going to change. So there's two paths forward. Right. There's an infinite number of paths forward, but there's two categories. It's either going to go in a net negative for you and everybody else, or it's going to go in a net positive for you and everybody else. And it's not always going to be directionally that way. There's going to be days where it's incredibly challenging, incredibly, like, it breaks you down. Right. And then you're going to have days of massive highs where, like meet days, the best of meet days where you come out victorious and you feel like undefeatable. You're going to have both of those. But you're either moving in one of those directions on an average standpoint. And when you keep your focus and keep your mission on building that person that does that overcomes those challenges, finds that opportunity, can grow stronger mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, then the reason we have the do the impossible part in there, we say you will inevitably do the impossible in some way, some shape, or some form. If you compound that process over a long enough time horizon, if you kept competing for the next 80 years, you would eventually have a meet where everything lined up absolutely perfectly how you wanted it to, and you had that moment of doing something truly impossible. And those moments are amazing, they're great, and you should cherish those moments when they happen, because like you said, life is easy when everything goes great, and those moments are worth cherishing, you know. But when you focus on building that person, that's what allows you to get through the times where life is hard, and it's going to happen.
I think one of the things that people neglect is that person can be yourself.
Yeah.
That's one of those things that a lot of us neglect, is that. And I know I have. I've had moments in life that I've been forced to take a step back because I wasn't being grateful, wasn't looking at those, wasn't thinking of opportunities. It was more of, I can't even think the negative side now because it's such a positive spin in my head with things, you know. The previous podcast I had the opportunity to be on, we were talking about the para stuff, you know, and I called them superpowers, you know, because that's where my mind goes with a lot of these things, and I want to cultivate that in others. That's one of the things that I know you guys try to share. That's something I try to share with people. That's why I love getting to share my story and these different opportunities with things. Is nobody knows where somebody is in life necessarily or what they've been through. I mean, we've got the opportunity with our group and a lot of our gym that we know, but we don't know the deep, dark parts always, you know, or the super highs sometimes that we haven't actually been a part of or seen. You know, I've known you for the past 3 years, 4 years, somewhere in that ballpark. And I know you lost your leg, and I know you battle a lot of other health issues. Most people that don't know that depth of you just know you don't have a leg. You know, and I've talked about that, and that's one of the things I get the opportunity to talk about you, and I always brag about guys from the gym. That's one of the things I'm like, everybody knows there's lost a leg, but they don't know this other plethora of health issues that's ongoing, you know. Myself, everybody knows I tore my quads, but a lot of people don't know I dealt with cancer. Or vice versa. They don't know I tore my quads. They're like, hey, you have a double knee replacement? I'm like, no, I tore both quads 4 years ago. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. So again, it's about building and building and building, myself included, and the people around me, and people I can reach in whatever manner that is. You know, whether that's social media or getting the opportunity to be on this podcast, or competing and sharing, or whatever those things are. You know, it's a constant process of building in whatever way you can. You're gonna get destroyed at times, and that building process is gonna come to a complete halt, and you're gonna have to start over. Yeah. But those, again, I've seen that opportunity of, okay, let me look back and look at the positive stuff. And I mentioned some of this stuff before with the quad tear. I was in a wheelchair 8 weeks, non-weight bearing, no anything. A couple weeks where, hey, I'm just stuck at the house and can't do anything at all. So it made me take a step back, look at the gym, look what we were bringing to people. And to me, that's kind of what triggered where we're at now as far as the monsters and the family and a lot of that stuff that we've built at this point, which sounds crazy, but that's a lot of that, I think.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring up that distinction because you're absolutely right, and I think it has to be yourself. Like, you have to have yourself as the key, central, and biggest part of all of it. Like, you have to be building yourself, because for a couple of reasons. One is you are the only person you have complete and total influence over. You cannot control it. Now, certainly you can build others up and give them messages and try to lead them in a great path. And that will only happen at the highest level by building yourself up to that highest level. But at the end of the day, you can't control anybody else. Like, you have no like absolute control over anybody else. And we're not meant to, you know. That's the beauty of the process, you know. That's the art of the process. But by focusing on the one person you do have complete and total control over, which is yourself, you will build yourself into a person who will be able to build other people up by the example you set, by the words you speak, by the actions you live every day. And the more you build yourself up, the more you will be able to reliably be that inspiration, that leader, that person for everybody around you.
Yeah, people are watching whether you realize it or not, whether it's a positive way or a negative way, you know. I think in general, most people see what we do in a positive light, but others people see it in a negative light. We've had gym members leave because we weren't hardcore enough. Mm-hmm. We weren't a private club. You know, we lost an elite lifter because of that. Yeah. And that was going to limit what we want to do long term, our vision, if you will. Yeah. People quite often ask me that, and I'm like, I want to leave a legacy behind that people know who we are and why we were here. What I get to do with my friends and the numbers I get to do and the lifting and all those things is great, but what kind of impact are we having long term? Not even while I'm alive, but even after that, where are we at? Did we change somebody's life, you know?
Yeah, where are you impacting people beyond just the numbers on open powerlifting?
Right.
You know, if there were a site people could go to and see not just the numbers on open powerlifting,
life influencers
but
or something. Yeah,
like the things everybody at Monsters had overcome to get those numbers, you know, or work through, or whatever else it is. You know, that is the stuff that I know drives you a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
More than just the highest number possible.
Oh yeah, it's not about the number.
Yeah, and if that is somebody's goal, like that's fine.
You're right,
like,
right. Yeah, there's
you
nothing
know,
wrong
you
with
look
that
at,
at
you look
all.
at like Westside, that's what drove them a lot. You know, they were stronger by any means possible.
Right.
You know, and if that's what drives you, that's great. But you've got to know what is that thing for you. And like you talk about, you know, there's people that have been driven away because we weren't exactly what they need.
Right.
That's fine.
Yep.
You know,
that's okay.
They can go find something that is what they need.
Right.
You know, and not that we ever want to drive somebody away, but you can never compromise. You can never sacrifice that mission and vision that you have for yourself in your own life, as well as what you have for Monsters, in order just to try to fit it into somebody else's box. Yeah.
It's a good example. We have, to me, some of the best equipment in the area. You'll probably have to go a couple hours away to find a lot of what we have, whether it's bars or some of the other equipment we have and that kind of stuff, you know. I'm not bragging about me. I'm bragging about us as a community, because that's what's made all this happen at that level, you know. And we bring a lot of opportunity to a lot of people in that aspect, but we don't check everybody's boxes necessarily, you know, and that's okay. I understand that. We've had people leave because we're a little too hardcore for them, but very, very few. Because again, once you get to know any of the powerlifters, they're a great group of people. They will stop in the middle of anything to go help anybody. And that's what I would continue to build, you know, along with Chuck at 89 years old, still coming to the gym, you know, or somebody like, not Paul McSween, but another Paul that comes to our gym, mid 60s. Didn't even start lifting until he came to us at 60 or 61 years old. You know, and we've had such an impact on his life and so much confidence in himself. And when he goes back home, people are like, and much like the other Paul was like, you take up residence in the gym now or what? You know, and just speaks so positive, and they get to have an impact on people because of this little seed that we planted, you know. That's awesome to me.
Yeah, that's what I love. And that it speaks to the core and the heart of what Monsters is, you know. Yes, we're a powerlifting gym. Yes, we're a little more hardcore on the spectrum of what gyms. Commercial gyms. Yeah, commercial gyms. But at the end of the day, we're hardcore about the people in there. I don't know anybody inside Monsters right now that cares like about anybody else's numbers in terms of like, are they good enough?
Right.
Like we all want to see people get better. And for us, the numbers they're just an objective metric of they're a reflection of what's going on behind the scenes, the work that's being done internally.
Yeah, where they're at currently is what that number is to me. You know, I had a couple people recently, and I didn't even know this, but they didn't necessarily feel a part of the gym because they weren't doing the numbers that that a lot of the other people were. They're competitors, and they're just getting into sport. They're just learning and all that stuff. And I'm like, hey, you guys are killing it. I'm super proud of these people. You know, I'm not going to throw any names out or nothing like that, but I have such a high level of respect for people getting into it. You know, I think it's such a great sport, but it's not easy to get out there and put a singlet on. Nobody looks good in a singlet, you know, especially if you're a lady. I know how everybody's so self-conscious and all these things, especially nowadays. And to do that alone is incredible. Alone to actually step on the platform and compete with a standard, you know. I have so much respect for anybody, and the same thing applies to the bodybuilding or any other competition. And not everybody's competition driven. They don't have to be. I did it to keep me lifting and keep moving forward. Again, much the same. And I think a lot of other people do that same thing. But it's also became this huge family. And the same applied when we went to the doghouse that we just competed at with the federation and the lifting we were just doing, you know. We went to a whole different world, if you will, and they were great people. We stepped right in and felt a part of, And I think that's something that's unique in powerlifting, that you can go do that almost anywhere. I've got people that I competed with at my very first meet that I've ran into and like, hey man, what's going on? Da, 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 da. And we keep in contact, whether social media or whatever. And it's not consistent all the time. It may be once a year, it may be once every 5 years, but they're still there, regardless. I've been to meets that, hey man, you care to help me? I need somebody to help wrap me or whatever. And I have no problem at all with anybody. If I'm not competing, I will help anybody at any time. And most people know that, but not everybody's that way. But I think that's a lot of the powerlifting world and what they bring to the table. That's why I love the sport so much.
Yeah. And that just reflects what we just said about monsters, is like you care so much about the people.
Oh yeah, I love
what they're fighting through, what they're overcoming, what they're doing, who they're building to be able to get under that bar. And that's the part I care about. Like, I think that's the beauty, where the heart of the beauty of the whole sport is, because that's also something that anybody at any level, regardless of what weight's on the bar, regardless of how much experience they may or may not have had, they can always do that every single time they show up to step on that platform.
Here's somebody, and again, I've talked to some parents that have had younger people into lifting and they've stepped away now, but I'm like, you've given them an opportunity that they got for the rest of their life now. Whether they never compete again, or they decide to go on to compete, or they never lift in a powerlifting style, if you will, whatever, you still give them that opportunity, and that's tools they got for the rest of their life, not just in lifting, but to deal with life. A lot of people think it just revolves around that, and I know we've really talked about this recently, of it's about building life, and this is one of those tools that we can use for lots of things in life. It's a monkey wrench, if you will, in a lot of ways, or whatever.
When you're used to having those moments where you get under a weight, for you it was that bar of 672, it's like everything else in the world disappears. When you build that up as a consistent practice, then those moments when life hits you in that way, when you get that diagnosis or when you get that news or whatever it may be, where everything else fades away, it's not going to make the situation easy, but you've been there before. You've got a framework, you've got a foundation, you know how to step forward. And that at the heart of really training in general, but especially in powerlifting, I think really speaks to the very greatest of what it can offer. And you talk about being able to help others in the sport as well, and that's, I think, another piece that really I've always had so much massive respect for you for, is even when you are competing, you give up so much to help other people, because you're there setting up for the meet, you're there helping with whatever, especially the ones at Monsters, you're there setting up for the meet, you're there checking in on people, and I know like how difficult of a thing that can be for me to do at the very limited level that I do it. When I come out to compete, I always want to see how Natalie's doing, how Wade's doing, how Paul's doing, make sure everybody's got their mindset locked, and I want to see their lifts. I know how hard that is for me to do. I can't imagine doing it on the scale you do it. And then you, like for April meet, you're giving out several 500 plus pound lift offs, which is basically like you're doing a lot of work when you're lifting that much weight out, because when you're in a shirt, like you taught me, like there's not a lot you can do, the lifter can do to get that weight out of the rack. It's a lot on the person lifting off, and you're doing all that in between your own sets and your own lifts, and you've wrapped me up before in between your own lifts that you have to do in squat, and so it's you're really always given in that manner, and I think it's such a beautiful part of how you compete, and I think that actually not only does it give more to the lifter, but I'd imagine it has to give a lot to you as well.
It does. Again, there are opportunities to me. Can it be a lot of work at times, and do I reel myself back in at times? I absolutely do, but there's a lot of times where, okay, I'm going to give my absolute all to everybody that I possibly can. Does it take a toll? It does sometimes. And do I suffer in my own lifting at times? I'm sure I do, but it's not about that to me.
But I would almost argue too, though, what it gives you, like from a spiritual perspective, of being able to just see one of your lifters go out who you've played, some
role
whatever part in helping them hit that lift, doing something that's crazy that they've been chasing for a long time, or maybe something they shouldn't have even been able to do. Right. Like the amount of like beauty and satisfaction and like happiness.
Extremely gratifying to see people succeed, even when they fail. And I know that sounds odd, but again, just to get out there and make that attempt to do something they never thought they could do and limit themselves. And I've had that opportunity to pass that along to other people and to see them doing the exact same thing that I've done for them. It's one of those things that I like, wow, I did make a difference. I mentioned Heather quite often with a lot of things, and the way she handled her girls at the December meet would have been down to the fanny pack exactly what I would have done, you know? And that's one of those things, like, that's pretty cool. I got to make that impact on her. Yeah. And I'm like, I can't take credit for what Heather does, by no means. She's phenomenal in her own person, but I know I've had an impact in her life.
Yeah. You helped lay foundation. You provided examples. You showed steps that can be taken.
And that's extremely rewarding to me. It's much more probably to me than it is for her and herself. And people don't understand that. Again, that's one of those things I think get neglected. And I'm not saying those things to brag, because I'm not a bragger at all in that aspect, but I think I've really had to take a step back quite often and accept some of that gratitude, if you will, even from you. And you're probably the person that really drove that to me is, hey, just shut up and accept it, man. You've done some incredible things.
There's a big difference between bragging and being arrogant and being ego driven. There's a big difference between that and having gratitude for what or what people will directly tell you you've done for them, but also like the part you played. And it doesn't matter whether it's like, was I 10% of that lift or was I, because it was really 100% of that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
But so it doesn't matter like even how much, just knowing that. And I don't even think it's knowing that you were a part of it. I think it's the gratitude in its purest form really comes from that idea of kind of passing it down.
Yeah.
Because you've had people like Gary, you've had those same moments where
absolutely.
like you've hit massive PRs in the gym and I'm sure Gary watched on knowing that like he helped influence you in that way. And now like you're watching other lifters hit that same thing, and you can that to me is always more gratifying than any PR I've ever hit. Being able to watch somebody else hit something because you kind of unlocked that door for them. You showed them that potential was possible.
That opportunity, again, is other ones where it's just by hosting meets at the gym, we give somebody the opportunity to step up and do that.
Yeah.
Whatever level that is. Again, I've coached some very small girls in help that deadlifted well over 300 pounds, and absolutely amazing. And these are people that are like, hey, man, I can't lift with you guys. I'm not strong enough to. Just show up. Come in and do it. And they were grateful and all those things. And at that point in my life and where I was at as far as mental, I was doing pretty well, but I couldn't accept that gratitude, where now I can, even looking back on, I'm like, it's cool. I got to have an impact on that person.
Yeah. And that is the most beautiful part of it all. And it doesn't have to be anything for anybody else except you, and I think that then you gain so much more forward drive and momentum and passion for it. By accepting that. And so it's one of those net positive things, and it never has to be a bad thing. It never has to be a negative thing. Just like we talked about the hard things in life, the hardest moments in life can lead in a positive or negative direction. Right. Life's most beautiful moments can as well.
Yep.
And, you can build and compound and, 10x that beauty of that situation. And use it in your own life to drive you forward, or you can take it in a negative situation. But I don't think that we've gotten kind of in this phase where nobody ever wants to come off as arrogant or bragging or anything like that. I don't want that. Nobody ever wants that, And but at the same time, we can't let the fear of coming off that way hold us back from accepting that gratitude of what that can bring in our own lives. And so it's a balance just like anything else, and it's a path, and I think it's almost a skill you have to learn, just like with anything else. But I know how you say, like people can tell you exactly what the impact you've had on them. And I know that I've told you that so many times before. And, you know, it's from your perspective, I know, because the same things happen to me now. And it's like, it's so easy to be like, no, man, I didn't do anything. Like, you did all that work. Like, you made that happen. And that's the truth of it. But at the same time, it's like, would it have happened, though, if you hadn't showed them that path,
right,
or hadn't led them down that path?
Again, it's like showing somebody light. Whatever they do with that light, whether they run away from it or they come towards it, it's 100% up to them. But hey, they're at least aware of it at this point. And that's probably been my biggest challenge over the last, let's say, year, is learning how to accept some of that gratitude and being okay with it and being okay to share that. You know, it's not a matter of bragging. I think most of the people know me well enough that they know I'm not a bragger. I don't care about that aspect. It's about, again, getting to share success stories. Maybe is a good way to look at it in that aspect of Heather being one. From addiction and lifting and coaching at this point and progression in life, you know, that I know, and we've talked, me and her have talked today, I've got to share a little bit of that and know I've had at least a little bit of an impact with those things. So to take a little bit of pride in making that influence and sharing that and let somebody know that you're proud of them, I think helps them as well with that.
Yeah, and it's just like being proud of a lift you did. You know, somebody can be proud of a lift without bragging about it, without being arrogant in any way, shape, or form, you know. And they can be the most humble person on the planet and still be proud of what they've accomplished and what they've done. And I think it's the same thing in this situation. Like, you can still be proud of how you've influenced people. You don't even have to put a metric on it. You don't have to put a number on it. You don't have to put anything on it. But you can be proud of what you've been able to pass down, how you've been able to influence people, and then you can take that pride and that gratitude and turn around into driving yourself to help more people in the same way. And I think that's
how I look at it.
Yeah, that's the most pure and the most beautiful form of all that. Yeah, and that's where like I kind of love this like transition phase that I think kind of happens. You know, if you're somebody who pursues it in the right ways over a long enough time horizon, I really love this transition period that happens when you kind of have that focus on other people and their numbers. Because when you're first starting out, like, I think it's easy to, and it's probably how it should be. When you're learning, everybody around you is more experienced than you.
Right.
You're starting out, you're taking in new information, you're hitting all these new PRs, these new numbers, and it's so exciting, and you should grasp onto that. But then it eventually transitions to the point where you're able to help other people hit massive numbers. And then, you know, it's for me, it's been a weird thing recently because I've hit several PRs in multiple lifts just along this prep, let alone what's even going to happen on the platform. But it's like every time I hit a PR, it's like, it used to be like, well, you've seen that reaction video when I deadlifted 500 pounds. Like, it used to be like the greatest, like most amazing feeling, like most exciting feeling ever. And now it's just like, I set an 11 pound PR on squat this weekend on a day that was not even remotely optimal for me and how I was feeling. And it was just like,
okay, now what?
Yeah, it's like cool, but it's like, okay, whatever. But because now it's like I don't even get remotely as fired up about my PRs as I do about watching, you know,
others.
Watching somebody
100%.
Else do it. You know,
100%.
especially if it's somebody that you know that you've been able to help them get there. That's infinitely more rewarding and more exciting. And I think that's a really cool, because there is no limit to that potential.
No.
There's no limit to, you know, we all have a number that is the heaviest number we can possibly squat. And while it may be beyond what we ever should have been able to do, while it may be something impossible for what we should have been able to do given the circumstances, that does not exist for how many people you can help and how many PRs you can help others set. And I think that's why it's such an intensely gratifying.
That's a very good way to look at it. I never really considered that aspect. Okay, you yourself are only going to hit so many PRs in life. Yeah. But let's say you influence 5 people. Mm-hmm. So that's 5 times more lifetime PRs that you get to be part of.
Yeah.
Where, okay, I'll go squat 1,000 pounds. Oh yeah, awesome, yay! I get to go watch you squat. Okay, you're gonna hit 500 this meet, and you decide whenever you want to compete again, if you ever decide again, or bench or whatever it is, and you go squat 510.
Yeah.
I'm be excited again for you, you know, or 550 or 520, or if you jump back in the shirt and you hit 500, and I know that's a goal for you, that I'm like, again, that's like a PR for me, you know.
Yeah.
It's okay. I get to feel that lots more because I've got the opportunity to help others.
Yeah, and that's the really cool part, because there's no, like
It's
I said,
limitless
there's
in
no
that
limit
aspect.
where you can take that side of things, and there's also nothing that can, like, you can also keep growing and improving in that.
Right.
Like you can always, you know, you can keep helping more people in more intense, more beautiful ways. And that's why the show drives Austin and I so hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's such a big passion for us, because, you know, with what we face and with what so many people face in life from a health perspective, and the challenges that, the physical challenges that can come, you know, we see it as if there's no limit to what we can do with this show. And it's every episode we publish, that's more people that we help. Even if it's some people that we've helped before, and once that episode's published, it'll be here for as long as the internet's here, which, you know, is essentially indefinite at this point. So even if it's 10 years from now and somebody's going back and listening to this episode we're recording right now, you know, even if, like, we're not even here, or if for some reason we're not even, like, powerlifting or competing or anymore, or no matter what the circumstances of life are, what we're sitting down and recording right now still has the potential to help somebody in that way. And seeing, like, the limitless potential of that, what a guy named Alex Hormozy would call an infinite game, playing infinite games in life, are always going to be the most rewarding. So it's been just an unbelievable journey to have the opportunity to be a part of, just being a part of this Monsters family, you know, walking down the road and growing so much in powerlifting and my own competitive performance, and then now getting to this side where it's like, man, exploring the opportunities of, like, how can I help other people in the same way. You know, it's been a really cool arc, a really great journey to be a part of, and just an awesome family to grow with. But I think what's most rewarding about it, and probably the greatest thing you've taught me, is just how to help others grow in the same capacity. And so that's what I'm most excited for going forward. So
I agree. I mean, I'm much the same with that. I see all the time as an opportunity, you know, whether it's just reaching out to somebody. We had a couple of visitors yesterday that are pro bodybuilders, and I didn't even realize that's who they were at the time at the gym until Jen recognized them. I'm like, oh, hell, I need to say something to them, you know? And did it make a difference to them? Not necessarily, but they seemed pretty excited that they got recognized, and Jaden actually had sent them down previously, and they've been to the gym a couple times now and that kind of stuff. So I'm like, here's just another one of those opportunities that, hey, I might have missed if somebody not had said something. And did it make a difference? I don't know, but they seemed excited about it, which is cool, you know?
Yeah. And that's where it's like you said earlier, we never see how much we're influencing and impacting people. And so it's almost like that's where that phrase, we say your potential is your responsibility. Yeah. You know, like, you took it as like a responsibility to just be able to go up and say hi to them. Not that you think you're going to change their life or, you know, or even influence their path or their direction or anything, but, like, you know that you can provide support for them in some way. And so the potential to be able to do that, you know, like, you felt like you had to go up and chat with them, and that you wanted to go up and chat with them. We never want this responsibility word to come across as, should never be a negative thing. No. It should always be a positive, motivating, driving thing. Like, I have the potential to do this, or I have the potential to make this happen in this area that I'm really passionate about. So I'm just going to keep my mind open to it and give myself to it as much as I can, as much as I'm able to. And, you know, keep that unruly faith in that potential and what might happen from it, whether it's tomorrow or whether it's a year or 5 or 10 years down the road, you know. Again,
it's unlimited. You know, you don't know.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to share little bits and pieces of lots of things in life with lots of people. And did that make a difference? I don't know. but I was happy I got to share it.
Yeah, and it's also compounded interest, just like financial investments. You know, like you help 5 people, they go and help 5 people. It's 25.
Yep.
They go on and help 5 people, and that's beyond my genetic potential for math. But you see,
it's unlimited.
Yeah, you see how those numbers expand and grow, and you look at somebody like Ed Cohn or Dave Hoff, who you brought up. How many people have they helped influence and drive and unlock doors for? There may be no Colton the Limit Breaker without Ed Cohn. You know?
Exactly. That's where I was going to go with that. People, and I think that's one of the things we especially do in our area, is somebody doesn't necessarily know that's possible. Okay, I've seen so-and-so do it. Wait, there's somebody at our gym that does that? Huh, that's pretty wild. Yeah. What can I do? You know, and that's, again, opening that door for somebody just to realize it's even possible.
And that's how we all grow, and ultimately that's how the sport grows, and it's how you unlock the potential of the human race. Yeah. You know, because, I mean, you know, the big news now is Thor pulled 505 kilos yesterday. Right. Awesome, incredible achievement. Like, you know, hats off to him. Yeah. Hats off to him. The most that any human has ever deadlifted, period, ever. Like, that's really cool.
Right.
That's a humanity changing moment. But it was only like 8 years ago, something like that Eddie pulled 500 for the first time, which was like revolutionary to mankind. Right. You know, that was like a barrier that people never ever thought would happen. But it just shows you how, like, 8 years is not a long time when you look at the however long humanity existed. You know, it shows you how quickly things can change. And then you think from now, like 8 years from now, what are people going to be doing? Because when Eddie pulled a 500 kilo, nobody ever dreamed there'd be a young kid at 242 pounds pulling
275.
275 or whatever it is, pulling 500 kilo. You know, and it's
again, before
really
that,
cool to see how
nobody even thought it was possible.
It's cool to see how just simply unlocking that door in people's mind to potential can drive them forward to beyond limits that they never dreamed they'd reach.
If you told Colton 8 years ago when Eddie Hall pulled that he might do that someday.
When he was, 15 years old?
Tell him he might do that someday. And he probably look at you like you're insane.
Yeah. And that's why we chase potential. That's why we chase the impossible. That's why the very last line of our vision, the core of everything we're trying to build, is a group of people in constant pursuit of the impossible. Because if we keep our eyes set on that, who knows what we're going to unlock?
Exactly.
You know, and it's never worth setting your eyes on a limitation, because that will only keep you living below your potential.
That's one of the things I tell everybody I come in contact with that talk to me about lifting and what they're capable of. I'm like, I don't want to put a top number on you, because to me, it's unlimited.
Yeah.
You know, again, we mentioned Colton a minute ago, but people think he has the potential to chase Dave's number in multiply gear.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who's to say that's not possible? Yeah. This kid's almost a 2,700 pound total, I think. 100 raw at 23 years old.
Yeah.
At 267, I believe.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And he could compete for another 10 years and still be young.
Yeah.
You know? And he's already competing at a higher level than anybody's ever done raw, as far as I'm aware.
Yep. All-time world record raw total.
Yeah. So I love seeing just experiences like that, seeing examples of that, because it can be applied to any situation,
anything you want to take in life,
any pursuit in life, you know. So and we can all, even though we may not all have the genetic potential to do, or actually the vast majority of us will not have the genetic potential to do what Colton's doing right now, we all have the capacity to do that within the scope of our own lives.
To apply it in our own life.
Like and like what I was showing you that video yesterday. This is kind of a great way to wrap things up, I think. I was showing you that video yesterday of me squatting 135 pounds, kind of the first few times I'd ever squatted. Right. And that was back in 2018. Really only 7 to 8 years ago now. And I thought that was like
top of the world.
Yeah, I was like, the fact that an amputee can put this bar on his back and squat this, that's like peak. That's as high as you can get. And that kid back then was still, like, I was still battling so much darkness. I was still into alcohol pretty deep. Like I told you, I was on a better path, but I had a very, very long way to go. And I'm like, man, I like to think about this a lot. I'm like, if who I am right now could walk into that gym and show that kid what he would one day be doing, one day, like if I even just told him, hey, one day you're going to get under 500 pounds and you're going to squat it, like, what kind of effect would that have on him, you know? And so that's where, I guess, kind of circling back to what we talked about earlier about how gratifying it can be, and you know, how it can be one of those infinite games, and how it can be so much more important to help set that, to build that impossible version of ourselves so that we can influence and inspire it in others. Because I can't go back and walk in that gym and tell that former version of myself, like, hey, you're going to squat 500 someday. But who's to say there's not a kid right now, and in fact, I know there's a kid who's a double leg amputee up in Zanesville, interested in getting into lifting. And, you know, like, I'll see it sometimes where he'll, like, go on and like my videos. And whether he cares or not, you know, I'm hoping I'm influencing him in some way, but ultimately it doesn't matter, because what that can mean to me is it gives me that responsibility, my own potential of, hey, he's watching. And I'm going to influence him in some way, shape, or form, whether it's for lifting or whether it's for wrestling, which he's getting to be a pretty good wrestler right now, you know, whatever it may be. There's somebody listening, there's somebody watching, there's somebody who needs that just as much as that former version of myself, squatting 135, needed that. And that's I think one of the coolest things about all this stuff.
Definitely.
But yeah, man, it's I really appreciate you coming on today, brother, because it's just like we talked about that story of me walking in the gym and you giving me the tour. I would have never dreamed that we'd be, you know, going down the journey we ended up going down. And what gives me so much excitement about that, if this is what's happened in the last 5 years, what the hell's going to happen in the next 5?
Exactly.
You know? So that's what's truly exciting for me to think about. But I think I reflect pretty much everybody who's ever been at Monsters in some way, shape, or form, that we can't thank you enough for the doors you've opened for us, both literally and figuratively. Because if Monsters didn't exist, I would not be squatting 500 pounds next week or in a month. And if the people at Monsters didn't exist, I don't even know where I'd be. You know, I don't know that 2023 would have happened. I don't know that Team Impossible would have happened. I don't even think that this podcast would have happened. So by opening up the doors, by influencing the people you have in your lives that have gone to influence other people and create this community and this family we have there, you know, it's set that ball rolling, and put in motion so many incredible, impossible things that people have been able to do. You know, we've all been able to come together and do in the last 5 years, and hopefully we'll continue to do that in the future. And so it's just an unbelievable honor to have had you in my corner, and to have you lead me in ways and open up these doors in ways, because it would have never happened without that. You know, even though we talk about, like, I'm the one here putting in the work now for this 500-pound squat, if you and so many others at Monsters hadn't opened up that door, it wouldn't have happened at all. And so in a way, it's kind of like all of our lifts. Everybody who's been on that journey, everybody who's been a part of that family, it's really for all of us.
It's very humbling to me when people talk like that. You know, it's overwhelming. I get goosebumps and literally and that kind of thing. You know, it's humbling to me. I don't know what else to say or how else to put it. You know, I'm happy that I was given that opportunity to even come up and make the Monsters thing happen from the get-go. Alone where it's at, that I never would have fathomed. And again, like you mentioned, 5 years, where are we going to be at? Yeah. Whether influences will we get to have? Yeah.
And that's, I think, the best thing we can do to, you know, because I know, like, to a point, kind of like what you mean with some people tell me stuff like that, that we've influenced with Team Impossible and stuff. And it's like, I think the best thing we can do going forward is just keep playing that infinite game, keep getting better at it, keep leading, inspiring, opening doors, unlocking new potential for the next generation, and then we get the fun of sitting back and watching what these crazy people are doing. But we got to keep doing that crazy stuff ourselves too, because that's fun in its own right.
Yeah. But, absolutely. And again, that door's not open if they don't see that.
Absolutely, for sure. So, all right, brother. Well, anything? What you got? What you got lined up next?
Not real sure. Kind of depend on my work schedule. I wanted to compete again before I hit 50 to reset some of the records I've set. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but might make a go at the Americas coming up in November. If not, we'll plan out something. Again, as far as myself in competition, as far as the gym and continue to grow, Paranationals being the next big event, really looking forward to getting it started this year and continue to grow that aspect. That's one of the things we've both have put a lot of work into and try to promote and happen. And I think it's going to be amazing in itself. We get to watch you squat 500 plus, get to watch some of the other athletes do things that they didn't even have an opportunity to do previously before this, and what the USPC has brought forward to us. And we've put a lot of work in making those things happen. Extremely proud of that. Moving forward for the gym itself, we're still looking to grow, still looking for a building and expanding and making those kind of things happen to continue to be able to reach more people in whatever capacity we can. Those are the big goals right now for us.
Yeah, and those are all part of that infinite game.
Yeah,
that's what's cool about it. So, and that's another great thing. We got to bring up the Paranationals here, because this is a perfect example of a door that Clayton has unlocked for me. Even though I'm a para athlete and you're not a para athlete, you unlocked that door for me, and now I'm just so thankful to get to play a small part in having helped in some ways put together the para meet this year, and hopefully we'll get to play an even bigger part going forward in the years to come, to open these doors for as many para athletes as possible, because I think some of the mental, emotional, spiritual edge that para athletes can bring, even though we're far from the most physically impressive of lifts as far as numbers wise,
I disagree.
but even though we're not going to be Thor breaking records, shattering records for humanity, it's I think the edge that para athletes can bring is a really cool thing. It's a cool thing for me to witness, even being a part of that group, and I think it's cool for all of humanity to witness, because it, in a similar manner, it takes these challenges and it's a direct, objective demonstration of here's a challenge that could and should and would have shut so many people down, and here's this incredible athlete like Jeff or Arlen or any of the other incredible people we're going to have on the platform competing, and they just go out and make stuff happen you would never dream could be possible. And so it's if that's possible in that situation, what's possible for all of humanity? It's cool stuff to chase, cool stuff to think about. But massive shout out to Clayton specifically for dreaming up this idea, because it would never be happening if Clayton hadn't dreamed up the idea. Massive shout out to Johnny Lane, the CEO of USPC, United States Powerlifting Coalition, for being open and supportive in giving the structure of a meet being able to exist within his federation, and demonstrating once more how dedicated he and his meet and all of his staff are to the lifters and to the sport of powerlifting. And then massive shout out to so many other people that have been a part of assisting us in bringing this competition to life, like Invictus building a parabench, or Mars Bar donating bars that are the safest and going to be the safest and most effective for most of our lifters to be
most
able
of
to
our
lift
para athletes.
Yeah. So it's really been a lot of great people come together in a lot of great ways to help us put this on. We're excited for the very first Paranationals, and we can't wait to see where this goes and where it can build to. maybe even like we've said, a competition at the Arnold someday would be.
There's some plans in the works.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to showcase this to people. So, guys, thank you again for listening to this episode. Again, the only thing we ask of you is to help share this message, share this mission, share this vision, share this mindset with anyone you know who you think it could help. If you know any para-athletes that you think would be interested in coming out and competing, or even just learning more about their potential in strength sports, we would love to have them out just to watch the event, just to see what they may be able to do themselves someday. We would absolutely be honored to have any para-athletes or anybody who wants to help or be involved in any way that we can. We'd love to have them as part of this event. So thank you guys for sharing this episode. Thank you for being a part of our community and sharing in our mission and vision and what we're doing here at Impossible Performance, because at the end of the day, that's what drives me, that's what drives Austin, that's what drives so many of our guests forward in what they're chasing. You guys are the reason why we do everything we do, so that we can keep growing in this indefinite game that we've described, and keep building up and supporting and unlocking new doors of potential for so many people we may not even know, or people we may not have even met yet. But you guys are the best way that we do that. So thank you for your support. Thank you for being a part of everything we do here, because as always at Impossible Performance, we are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, as we discussed, keep building that best version of yourself. Keep growing in that indefinite game that you're chasing in life. And keep being impossible.